As you walk in, Yorick, the cloud seems to solidify around you, and you slow down in your forward movement. You're rolling initiative, and you don't know what it is. A translucent limb extending towards you, and it solidifies. That is a hit. And yes, that was a big bonus added to it. 18! Whoa. Ouch! Oh, you've been knocked out.
What?
Oh dear. That hurt.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, what?
And
yeah. Stay close to the tree, boys.
You do? Okay.
Ah,
All right. It is pretty fast, and that's not enough. Also, the cover was in the way.
Oh my god.
Okay. And it's going to strike again. Oh, okay. All right. This is brutal. This is brutal, folks. Okay.
We're still level 1. We're still level 1.
You are.
I don't feel like we're gonna make it to level 2.
Dear God.
The monster did 2 attacks and downed half the party. I made 2 attacks and didn't do a point of damage.
If somehow both can be made conscious again, you guys can stand up and just book it.
So the DM is telling us to book it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Oh god. Oh, our dice! Our dice! Where's our dice stats? Where's the dice stats mod? This is looking like 2 sessions ago, you guys.
17 to hit.
Alright, it is... It's just kind of disturbingly just kind of slides away, and the arrow is not close.
Okay, we're out of here. There is no way I'm staying in there.
Oh yeah, be familiar with if something has ACs go up like attack bonuses in Pathfinder. They scale up.
Okay, yeah.
People have leveled up.
Yay!
And I'd like to talk about level ups. And I think this is... I don't think it makes sense to continue doing the adventuring part. Does it sound fine to talk about that?
No, I think what would make the most sense is we go up the stairs, we take our level up, and we come back down and kick the monster's ass. Because we're like, we went up a couple of stairs. My cardio is through the roof now. I can fuck you up.
Oh, that's funny.
You do have some revenge. You have now 2 creatures to have vengeance against.
Yeah, I feel like it's a common theme where we just walk in a room, just get fucked, and then we're like, hey, you should probably get out of here. That they didn't lie when they say Abomination Vaults was deadly, for sure.
I'll say the truism, though, that's been true for many decades, that the deeper you go in a dungeon, the...
But the stairs went up.
No, you went down. Behind the secret door was the stairs went down, and then you found another stairwell right there that went back up to the second floor.
So it should have been
right now.
I suspected that was the case. I just was really trying to not metagame it because there was nothing that was in the diegetic of the scene that would have indicated that.
Like a misty room. Yeah. Yeah.
Like ultimately, the problem was that ultimately we had kind of done much of the main floor.
But
so it was like, you know,
I think it's fair just so that, you know, characters don't walk into deaths, for there to be some knowledge among adventurers that scarier things are look deeper down.
I'll be honest, in all my years of playing D&D, I've done dungeon crawls, but like never like classic ones, I'd say. So like I am discovering as I go along, but it's fine. All good.
Well, we have memorable stories.
I was just gonna say thank you very much for running another lovely game session. Thank you.
Yeah. I hope it wasn't discouraging. Well, I mean, you're facing another high level. Things are scary. Higher level things are scary.
I'm trying to figure out why you're trying to kill us, but
What if I can ask, what's CR?
Seeing you all being level 2 and getting that new abilities.
If I can ask, what CR was this monster?
Level 4.
Yeah, so there's no way in hell we were fighting that.
Yeah, and the curve is more severe when you're level 1 because of that low hit point pool. Some say that it become the balancing makes more sense when you get to like 4 or 5 or so.
That's sounds about right.
Plus 14 to
on
hit.
paper, that's only a severe encounter when it probably feels more like extreme.
I see. Is Pathfinder well balanced at late levels? Out of curiosity.
I find that it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I have Rex saw my level 15 speed run. All the time the D20 mattered. Like 3 of the degrees of success were possible on every roll.
Yeah, the balance seems to be on point. The thing is that it requires players to understand the game and play efficiently and properly.
Yeah,
that's like
that's
a very strong
why I
caveat.
wondered.
Yeah,
where is the where's the mathematical weight calibrated?
Marshals, like in terms of AC and stuff?
No. I guess I mean it's felt like there's this theory in game design where and I think maybe it was the developers that, no it was the developers of XCOM talked about how in XCOM a 65% chance of hitting is not actually the game is lying to you.
I knew it.
Your chance to hit is actually higher than 65%, but the game lies to you because what they found, like that basically they found that like that it's not fun to miss. And so I was wondering, like, what is like, is it 50-50?
Yeah, he lost.
No,
yeah. So I don't know if I have it anymore, but I had this really cool graph that literally showed you basically how the average AC of every monster increased by level, and then what was the expected plus to hit of players. And so for when you're fighting only one monster, regardless of what level you are in the game, because the math is like tight, so it all scales perfectly. If you're always fighting one monster, then you're basically on a 55 to 60% chance of hitting. Sometimes even like, depending on the level, because some levels are a little weird, you can be as far down as 50. But then you are always expected to have like a +1, either coming from like a bless or coming from like a bard or something. And then you're always expected to demoralize. And so the game is expecting you to do those things. Otherwise, you're 50-50 basically.
That's interesting, because I was wondering where like it was landing, because like I've definitely felt like my sense of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's felt like in a lot of the encounters that we've had that our chance to hit has hovered around like 50 to 40%.
Yeah.
And if we did, and even if we did like all the tactic stuff, it felt like it was actually pretty hard to swing it better than 60%. And that's been pretty challenging.
Really but that's like specifically for fighting like one monster. And so those are like tend to be really, really difficult.
That whole thing speaks to me because I'm designing my own game, and I went down the rabbit hole of math here of that 65% chance that Monty was talking about, where I built the entire system around 65% chance to hit, to where your armor class scales with level, your attack scales with level. It's always an estimated 65% chance to hit, because that math like psychologically feels good.
But is that 65% chance to hit as the baseline, and then optimal play increases it?
Well, yeah, you can do things. Now there's things, your abilities and others, the ways you play and stuff, add bonuses on top of that to your hits and stuff to be able to, whether it be gear or tactics or, combo moves you use with each other. Yeah. So I have had that same thought, and I've addressed it in different ways for my game, but I've seen it as a struggle point here in Pathfinder.
Okay, so we're level 2 now. So if you're playing optimal, like if you put your max stat all the way up and you have a +1 weapon, which at this level I think you're expected to have, you're gonna have a +9 to hit. And a monster of our level, so this would be just like a normal encounter. You might be fighting like 2 or 3 of those monsters at a time. I don't know. Average AC is 18. So that's a 55% chance of hitting or something. And then if you're fighting a solo monster, means that he's going to be like 2 levels above, and that's an average AC of 21. So that's a 45. I don't know, whatever that 40,
Oof.
45% off.
Oof. Yeah.
So
And that's
psychologically, even if it's 50-50, psychologically it feels way less than that. So like,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're
So
supposed
45 is
to
rough.
you're supposed to demoralize. Like you're supposed to make like flat-footed, because that's like a -2 to AC flat-footed, right? And then demoralize is another -1.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was curious whether is Pathfinder's kind of like, because it feels to me like well, it feels like every combat so far that I've experienced so far has been a one monster deal.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just the way that my experience has been so far with this is like it's felt like a lot of the and I'm surprised at like how difficult the solo
But I
monster fights
think
are,
it's because we're
on the
fighting
flip side,
monsters that are too strong for us. I believe the monsters we're fighting are like way above our
I don't think
level.
we're supposed to be level 1 for this long, you know, or,
No,
like, or
well,
at least
definitely
we got
not for
other
this last guy.
things.
No.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason.
yeah.
Because like you weren't there, Monty, but we had a fight with little blue goblins, for example, at the very beginning, like when we entered the dungeon, which are I assume made to be fought at level 1 since they're placed at the very beginning. And those, it felt like we were hitting them about like 65%, 70% of the time, I would say.
Cool.
So I think it's just because we're fighting like one monster is just way above our level, so that's why we feel like we're never hitting.
Yeah,
That's
I've
my
found
theory.
that what people say, like on Reddit and stuff, is that Pathfinder really shines in particular when you have the same amount of monsters as you have players. So like 4 monsters, because then the monsters are going to be at a -1 to your level, and then it feels good, right? It feels like you're probably like if we were to do that right now, we're at +9 to hit, and that monster would be 16 AC. So
Oh yeah,
it would be a lot
that's
better.
like-
Or it would feel maybe like what you're accustomed to feeling.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. Sorry, my internet. Yeah, the idea is that they made with the +10 -10 system. It means that those higher stats mean they will crit and crit more than once, often, and you will crit fail against their attacks. It means it kind of puts a premium on teamwork and setting up very accurate single attacks.
Yeah, you have to play optimally in this game.
At level 1, you're going to have that smaller hit point pool, and the balancing system is a little distorted at level 1. You saw it rolled high damage rolls. It was like 2d8 plus 4, I think, was its damage, or 2d8 plus something, and it rolled really, really high on its damage, and you were knocked out. And that was some poor luck combined with
incredible stats. It had a plus,
and the
plus
problem
14
is that, like,
to hit.
In theory, it could be perfectly well balanced, but if you start the encounter with one player dead, then it's already like we're starting already unbalanced, right? In theory, which is what happened. Technically, 2 players.
Yeah. And that's kind of also the story of the skeleton fight too.
I mean,
there were some early knockouts.
I mean, all of them really. Every single like big boss encounter has been kind of the same, where the combat starts and then something happens and one of us is either not there or out in some way, and then it's just the balance obviously goes bad there.
Yeah, that in combat healing is crucial.
Yeah, no, but the best encounter we've had was with the Misflit, the goblin like boss, because that felt like you had a lot of monsters, and so it wasn't quite as oppressive. You didn't have one monster that was like immune to damage or couldn't be hit because his AC was like, you know, on the roof or whatever. That felt like a really good encounter to me.
Did you get your question answered, Monty? I was
just like yes, we were just discussing like where just talking about math stuff. That was all. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Level X versus level X, the same level. Yeah, your first strike is going to be very accurate, like fair chance of critting, like 20% chance of critting, 70% chance of hitting or better. But then when you have level differences, it's usually like 1.5 per level is the change in the average statistic. And that also increases the chance of crits. So you feel those level differences, and that's the flip side of a counter system that is reliable, because the level means you need to have distances between the levels for it the difficulty total to be reliable.
And my particular criticism of the system, because I like that it's very it's like perfectly mathematically designed, right? So that the numbers are always going to be the same if you know like certain parts of the equation. So if you know that you're fighting one enemy, you know that what your chances of hitting are roughly going to be, right? Like, and that always basically applies regardless of level, provided that you have the same type of characters and composition. But I definitely dislike that. Like, it feels like, well, it feels very gamey, for one, but two, I'm obviously more like immersive role player type of person, but I definitely dislike that it feels like you can't fight monsters that are like above like 4 times your level, or if you're fighting anything that is less than like 2 or 3 times your level.
I assume you mean 2 or 3 CR above your level, not 2 or
level.
3
I'm sorry,
times.
not monsters that are 3
They're
levels
levels then.
below.
Okay, because otherwise I was going to be like, if you're a level 5 character, you have to fight a CR 20 monster in the end.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
have a
said the
bad
word
time as
times.
well.
Yeah, no, I got it. That's my bad.
Oh.
But yeah, no, if you're fighting, like if you're level 2, you can't fight like a monster that is level 6. And normally, like that makes sense from a gameplay perspective in the sense that there should be like, you know, you should be going up and fighting stronger things as you go. But you can find yourself in these situations where like you're fighting an ogre, and ogres are like known to be stupid. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to try and use this spell to confuse him, you know, targeting his weak save, which, you know, would be like his wisdom or his intelligence. But then you might end up in this situation where like, well, the ogre is like 5 levels above you, so he gets like a plus 30 to his check regardless of whether he's dumb or not. So you will guarantee fail. And that's where I'm like,
I'll shoot out some numbers. A level 4 creature I'm fighting has an AC of 20. This particular one I'm looking at. Many of you had attack bonuses of 7. If you have a magic weapon now and you're level 2, that's now a plus 9. So you would need an 11 or higher to hit.
Yeah, it swings pretty quick.
Yeah.
As you gain levels, yeah.
And then that means your second and third strikes would very likely not hit. And so maybe set it up with a debuff or something, or a buff could help that out.
I did put that chart on the chat if you guys want to see it. It has like all the averages for monsters at different levels and what the players are expected to have as a plus to hit and stuff like that.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thinking of big dumb creatures, a level 3 ogre warrior has a 15, has a plus 5 will save. So
there's a fair level 4?
Fail. Level 3.
Level 3.
Yeah.
So if you're level...
They have a plus 11 fortitude save. So because casters can decide what saving throw they'll target, they'll definitely want to go for the dumbness. But that's a decent chance. If you can survive its hits, if you can get a mental thing in there.
I think the it's always one of those things where like solo monsters I think are so tricky.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that's always hard to tell with an individual monster, at least from a like a narrative perspective, is like you're never sure whether this is a boss or whether this is like that lurker that's going to run away as soon as you push it, right?
Yes.
Whereas like being outnumbered is always like a more immediate, it feels like a much more immediate, like, like, especially when it's a medium-sized creature, like, you know, the psychology of it, right? Like, it's like, if you're like, here's a huge monster, you're like, oh man, this is going to be hard, right? But when you see that one medium-sized creature, or like the doll, like the doll was the doll was
I'm like joking.
And
we're literally making jokes about Monty Python as we're approaching it, right? Like,
but that was the whole thing. Of course, the doll is like, I was like, this thing is small. This thing is going to kill us, because there's no way a small thing that is not deadly, like, you know, like it like definitely.
I'm realizing the recall knowledge action, and maybe I should make a post about this because they're remastering Pathfinder now. Should include some giving some feedback on the level of the creature.
Like, so my here this is just me, like, game design theory.
Mm-hmm.
I played a lot of War Machine competitively and Magic the Gathering, and I'm someone that strongly believes that the default stance of a game should be 100% open information, no concealed information about game statistics, and then you find out if the game is better by concealing the information. And so for me, like, especially like 4th edition was one where, like, I just played 4E open information. Like, I was just like, fine, go ahead, look at the monster stat block, no surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And 4th edition played really well if you played it 100% open information. And so I do wonder, like, it feels like narratively you need to have that, like, you need to know, but like that definitely is one of those things where like that's a great idea though. Like, I feel like even if recall, like, but maybe it shouldn't even be recall knowledge though. Like, I feel like there should be a skill, like another skill that is like size up the enemy. Like, it feels wrong for it to be recall knowledge.
Does it timbers
In my
me
opinion.
shivers? No, shiver me timbers.
Like,
or what's the English expression?
I think, I mean, recall knowledge in general, I think needs a buff from the way it's written.
Yeah.
And to give players more incentive to use it. So for that reason, I'm all right with it.
Is it an action?
Yes.
That would be I'd make it a free action. Make it a free action or or an automatic thing. Like, I feel that that's the other thing about it, is that, like, spending an action to get info is like a weird,
So,
like, it's an intangible.
the two things I do for that is like what Monty's saying with, I have an interaction when I run D&D, and it's also transitioning over to DC-20, but there's like things you can do, like, hey, what do I know about this? What about this? What, like, just flavorful, piddly things that aren't going to like tax your action economy. But it's like, what do I know about this? Do I see this? Is there this? Or can I try, like, different things like that, to where you could like try and evaluate that way and then make a roll and I could describe more or less. But then I also use my dungeon master narration to try and get across, like, this thing, you get a chill down your spine. You feel like to try and like get that across too.
I was going to say that too. In the descriptions, I probably, this doll could have made it more medicine.
I guess.
On free action, I actually have this. I don't know if I've said it in this group. First of all, looks like we lost Evan. Yeah. Has everyone lost Evan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, all I can do is wait for him. But when people are investigating, when they're exploring, I usually allow a free recall knowledge when the combat starts. That's my reward to them for investigating.
That's a smart way to do
it.
I definitely feel like.
But otherwise, I hesitate to house rule, because there is a. I'm for buffing recall knowledge as it exists, because there are abilities that, like, let you recall knowledge for free, like the Thaumaturge or the Monster Hunter Ranger, that reward characters who, want to be like Monster Hunter types.
I'm very conflicted because, like, I do feel like my role play, my strategy, sometimes even my fun definitely becomes like increased when I do know what I'm up against to some degree, right? If I know, like, okay, well, I'm fighting a mummy. If the mummy touches you, I get cursed, right? So, like, they're vulnerable to fire. And I know this information, and I can kind of, like, use it in combat. I can take out, like, my torch, or we're fighting those skeletons, right? Knowing that I can punch the skeleton to deal bludgeoning damage, which they're weak to. That is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I almost feel, I agree with Monty a little bit in that, like, I feel like it should be, like, a free check to some regard. I do like it how in D&D you can just kind of like, would I know anything about this? And it doesn't really cost you anything. And then just having the recall knowledge be sort of like a specific, powerful ability for with Thaumaturge or some of the other.
I think you could actually say the mechanic to that person. So if somebody has any sort of extra feature, you could literally tell the mechanic like they are this or that instead of like, ooh, like they have a splash attack. You could be like, usually they can shoot 30 foot and and you could like get real meta with them to kind of pull back the curtain a little more.
I mean, in principle, I think it would be like it'd be super easy to bake it into a monster stat block too. What you get from recall knowledge, like I think, like, and this is just me riffing on it. Like, I feel that like a monster's like, I feel like you should get to know the monster's level. Like, it's almost like that's like the
starting point,
foot in the door. The starting point,
because like whenever they attack, you can see the modifier. Like we saw that was a plus 14 to hit, so you kind of know already that it's
Yeah. But like, whereas the obviously like knowing what the weakest defense is, I think that's like a huge thing. Like that's where the knowledge really makes a difference. But it's interesting too, because like I guess like Ronald, do people tend to build their spellcasters and like their characters that target different saving throws?
They have
like,
to.
Is it the thing where you always make sure that you've got all the saves?
That's considered
on your arsenal.
That's considered best practice, but I would say most caster players don't do it. That's my guess.
Right.
They decide to follow more into support role,
but technically, you're supposed
some
to
other kind of role that's less a direct attacky.
What I understand
on the actions, just this themes come up. Should some things be free actions? Before, and not just in this group, but I would just say that my approach has been to buff recon knowledge because there's a choice to force you to not have enough actions to do everything you want to do, and so you kind of have to. Anyway, I think that's is considered the appeal for some players, that they have to make some choices that aren't straightforward and obvious.
But wouldn't you?
I totally agree with you. I think my point is that like there's a category of actions that I would call housekeeping actions. Like they're things that aren't your character doing a cool thing. And I feel like from a game like there's a certain category of actions where like, is this the character doing something active and something proactive and something cool, versus is this the character spending actions to do something passive that doesn't feel like then doesn't translate into like something happening or changing in the game state, right? And so when it like, and that's where recall knowledge is such a hazy thing, because recall knowledge, you're spending an action, but you're not actually changing the game state through that action. You know more about what's happening, but none of the pieces have moved. Nothing is mechanically changed aside from your knowledge. And so assessing what the value of that is, like it's actually really hard to decide how much is this worth. And I can hear you from like saying like that it needs a buff, and maybe the answer just is there's actually no way to buff it that making spending an action on it is worthwhile. So make it a free action, but make it really clear what it gives you. Like that I'm just like shooting it out there from my perspective.
Another thing that I've done too, to maybe even avoid some of these situations, whether as far as mechanically goes, is I'm running Curse of Strahd right now, and they encounter a whatever. Well, there's a paladin and a cleric in the group, and I'll be like, in your studies, about, and like I don't even like unpromptedly as part of my painting the picture to them of like the stage of the fight, kind of like what Rex was saying about like, oh, I kind of like to know if it's fire so I can use this or that or the other. I will just straight up say, without them having to, this at the baseline to kind of set the tone of that bar of fun or whatever. And then if they want to ask more questions and make checks for whatever, I can add to that, especially if they have the ability.
Yeah.
I'll say just a couple things. Just one, they want to there's a lot of things that are subject to rolls in Pathfinder 2, including climbing. And there's a premium on that, and I think it goes too far in their kingdom building rules for Kingmaker. But it shows their philosophy. One of the things that does is it does mean that the specialists feel better at something. It rewards those who put resources into something.
Yeah.
Another thing is that I wouldn't say this is true for most players, some players, but they really do think it's cool that they analyze something, that they were the Sherlock Holmes, that they got the information, that got all the marshals to switch to their slashing weapons, and that they were kind of a leader on the battlefield kind of thing. But I acknowledge that it doesn't feel for many players as impactful as doing something directly. So my approach generally though has been to buff it and to give them more valuable bits of info.
And I definitely love having secret mechanics. Like almost every fight I ever run ever has some sort of secret mechanic going on that they have to figure out, like a little bit of a puzzle to like, oh, if we do this, then that, or so on which is just a fight by fight basis.
I generally do like the idea of having players having more information, especially when there's like more of a puzzle encounter. Or a complex trap. But there's something to be said too about, mystery. Mm-hmm. People not knowing exactly what that weird monstrosity is and is capable of for a certain tone of campaign. So I don't know. I feel like there's pros and cons.
Oh, for sure.
oh yeah, totally. And I feel like it like there's always like, I guess it's always for me a question of like, where do you want the surprises? Like I always like the surprises to be the exciting kind of surprises and not the not the gotchas. You know what I mean? Like when it's like, yeah, and it's fascinating, and I'm only talking about it because I find it I really do like the action economy stuff, and I like having to make those choices. I might not necessarily agree on which ones should be. I like having to make hard choices about what the actions are, but I would rather have my choices be, do I do cool thing A, cool thing B, or cool thing C? Not, I have to do this, that, and then I'm allowed to do cool thing A. Does that make sense?
No, the moment that pops in my head with your thing is when you had to pick up the mace. Because I think the two big differences from what now playing Pathfinder, what I've seen from the DC 20 I'm making compared to Pathfinder, because it's a 4 action point system, 3 action point system, is in DC 20 you spend your movement and you just have movement and you can spend it and you don't have to, like, once you take an action you then lose it, and then and I'm actually talking with Luke, DM Layer Luke, right now, and he's talking with the Pathfinder guys that created Pathfinder to ask them, why do you swipe it? Like, the people who created this, why do you wipe the slate clean once you take another action? Because is there a reason, or are you just trying to be strict, or like, what's the reason? Because I feel a lot more fluid to, like, I take a move action, I gain my movement speed, I can now use it however during my turn, then it's gone. And the second thing I have is a one interaction, and you can interact, sheath, unsheath, open door, close door, etc. There's one for free, and if you do a second free action, it now costs 1. So then I'm replaying that moment, the pick up the mace moment in DC 20 version, is you spend your move action, you run to the door, you free action, pick up the thing, you keep using the rest of your movement to interact with the door. Ooh, now you interact with the door, spin an action, interact that, and get out of there. So.
I mean, ultimately, that whole sequence was actually pretty slick. Like, I like that I could go up. Like, it was very clear, and like, I don't think that would have played out differently in a different system. Like, I think that had I been running that in 5, like, had I been running that in 5e, it probably still would have been a very similar situation of, like, it's going to be one turn to go up and close the doors, and then your next turn you're going to run out and scoot. I guess maybe you could have as a rogue, you might have been able to scoot in, close the door, scoot out because of cunning action in 5e, but you wouldn't have been able to pick up the mace at the same time.
Right,
So
that'd be 2 interactions.
Yeah, that right.
This
So
is why you should get DC 20 RPG.
yeah, I mean,
I'm biased.
I do think that there is like a lot of, my only there is, it would have played out the same, that whole interaction, and I think that would have been like totally fine.
I need to explain to viewers who might not have, I don't know if it recorded, but what happened was Monty had thought of this idea that another character would open the door first, ready in action to close it once Monty ran back out if necessary, because they were scared of the bird of death. Monty, the rogue, runs in, spends the last 2 actions to close each door. Evan was distracting the bird of death on the other end of the building. So that's what happened. But the Morning Star was in the middle and couldn't pick it up on the way to the doors, because that would have been an action breaking up the movement. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very intuitive. Like, you know how many things you have to do, you know how many actions you have, and you can, most often than not, it's 1-to-1, right? Even as mundane as something might sound, like picking up something, it's 1-to-1, so you know what you can do.
Well, I think we knew what to expect better this time too. Like Monty like literally like saw the whole thing out and planned it out way better this time because we knew what the heck we were getting into to be able to plan.
And that felt good. Yeah. That felt good. And definitely like now seeing the, like, even looking at next level, like I'm like, all right, I'm going to take this quick draw thing. I'm going to take this mobility thing. I'm going to take this, there's a lot of choice. Like I see where the choice is to get past, like, and to be able to do the things that other characters can't do. It does add up really quick, and it's really cool. Like I see where the character like abilities and progression come into it. So like I like the ability to build specialist characters that can do things that other characters can't do is really neat. And so seeing that a little bit, seeing now that we're leveling up and seeing that starting to manifest, that's really
because like
that's the first thing I brought up, that doing cool things is it's restricted. There are things denied to you by rule, especially at level 1, but you have a controlled progression, a series of skill feats that, for example, can let you, like if you take a quick jump, you don't need to do a running start and do 2 actions to run over something. You could do a standing leap and then roll athletics, and the number that you roll is the number of feet you travel forward. Then there's when you become master, that number could be as high as 35. Then there's a level 15 legendary feat called Cloud Jump that lets you go triple what you roll. So you can standing jump 100 feet forward at level 15 if you do that. So it gets...
That's a spring.
Pretty wild.
And the thing is that like those choices, like they're only fun and good to pick because there are restrictions, right? Because otherwise you can't just do those things, to start with. So that makes the actual process of picking the skill feats in particular to be really interesting.
Yeah.
But I actually want to jump. So like, it gives you like a reason to pick the feat.
And what Monty brought up earlier, does it feel housekeepy like attacks? That's kind of where we're,
I mean, the shield feels like that to me. I don't know if there's any, I don't know if I'm alone on that, but like, yeah.
I think it's because it's so powerful.
It is really good.
The shield.
It's true.
Especially, when you get those sturdy shields that can block 17 damage with each. Like, it's like you're almost doubling your health sometimes. If you invest the actions. And actions are a resource to invest too.
Well, yeah, like the action is like for a lot of classes, the actions are the resource, right? Like that is the resource management behind. I mean, like everything with the rogue, there's no resource to track beyond hit points. Like it's like, how am I spending the actions this turn? It's all about that, right? So,
I gotta say, it feels great for the players when I when I trip them and they kip up is a free action that doesn't provoke a reaction. There are things like that kind of give you those cool moments.
What level is that skill feat? I should put that on the list.
Level 7, Master Acrobatics. Yeah.
Okay.
As the bro, you can get a whole lot of feats.
Master Acrobatics. Okay, so
yep. Now it's about the time I need to go get lunch before my place closes. All right. Great gaming.
Take care, Al. Thanks, Al. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.